Hello and welcome to the Wellness Connection podcast with Fiona Kane. I'm your host and I have a guest here today and her name is Tina Summers. Hi, Tina.
Hi.
Would you tell us a little bit more about who you are? What's your background?
Oh, absolutely. I'm Tina Summers. I'm an artist. I work in oils primarily, and I have an art business that started in March this year.
Mhm.
Let's see, I'm a wife and a mum of two teenage boys, and really enjoying actually this time of life, which is never thought I'd say that about teenagers, but there we go.
Well, they have their good times and their bad times, but it goes very fast. I don't have children, but everyone I know who has children says it goes very fast. So you go from 1 minute thinking, oh my God, when's this going to be over? Next minute saying, oh my God, they're gone,
Yeah.
So
Yes.
yeah, you do everything in life. I think it's to try to make sure that you have a bit of gratitude for it while it's there, even if it's
Oh,
tough,
absolutely.
because
Mm.
the one thing that's for sure in life is change.
Yeah,
Mm.
100%. 100%.
And you don't have to say exactly where you are. It's up to you. But I'm in Sydney, and you're
Oh,
north of
I'm in Port
here.
Stephens.
Okay, so that's for anyone because we have people from all around the world. That's kind of north coast of in New South Wales, so north of Sydney, or
Yeah,
maybe
it's about 2 hours north, 2.5 hours
yeah.
north of Sydney. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely, beautiful, area on the water, so it's a lovely, lovely place in the
Very
world.
lovely.
Yeah. And of course, as I usually do, I always forget to say what our topic's gonna be, but generally today we're gonna be talking, if you didn't guess by who the artist is, where who the fact that the guest is an artist, we're talking about why creativity is important for health. And so I might start with just saying, how did you get started as an artist?
Well, I think like most people, my first experiences with art were as kids, and preschool. And I have a very vivid memory of a preschool moment where I remember being in the zone and absolutely like whipping out painting after painting. And the preschool teacher was, quite happy with everything that was going on. And I got to like, okay, what am I going to do next? And so I, got new butcher's paper. Everything was great. What color am I going to choose? Pink, because that was my favorite color at the time. And I put a pink stripe down the left side of the easel. And and I'm like, oh, this little voice inside me said it's finished. Now all the artists probably hear and go, yeah, I completely understand. Everyone else will be going, what do you mean it's finished?
Yeah, like me, I'm like,
But
"Huh?"
I just knew that the painting was finished. It didn't need anything else. There was nothing else it needed. It was done at the pink stripe. Well, the preschool teacher, like most people, was saying, well, you've got all this paper still to work on, why don't you put something else here? And she kept coming up with all these ideas of things I could add to the painting. And I was very adamant, no, as 3-year-olds are, no, the painting's finished.
Their favourite word, isn't it?
So I ended up having this big argument with my preschool teacher about the painting. And eventually she kind of got frustrated and she just said, well, maybe you can't paint anymore today. But what I heard was maybe you're not allowed to paint.
Yes.
And I don't remember painting any time after that at preschool. And I think my mum said one time I used to paint a lot and then all of a sudden the painting stopped.
Yeah.
So that was my experience. In when I was in year one, a bit of the self-talk came in. I joined a new school and sitting around the table and we're all doing a drawing activity. We loved Rainbow Bright. I'm now showing my age. Rainbow Bright was a big favourite of ours. She was a cartoon character that was on TV.
I don't
And
even know who that was actually. Maybe
no,
that's after my time or before. I know who that is. Oh. But I don't really know. I'm not much of an art person, so maybe I'm just not.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was just a TV show it was on, and all of us girls loved watching it. She had rainbow striped leggings, so I think that was one of the appeals that
Yeah.
she was very colourful, and we were all trying to draw this character. And like most of us, at that age, it's all stick figures. And there was one girl at the table who was doing like 2 lines for arms and 2 lines for each leg. So she could actually put the rainbow stockings on and
Mhm.
she was colouring them in. And so you end up with this, and I think it's a very natural and unfortunate part of human experience is comparison started.
Mm.
And looking at her work and looking at my work and this first idea of I'm not good at drawing came into my head.
Mm.
And then fast forward into high school, I still enjoyed doing art, so I chose art as my elective, and I still had it as a core subject in year 8. And this probably, I don't know if anyone's ever managed this before, but I managed to get an A and a D for the same subject in the same semester. And the reason I got a D was because I was so hung up on this one particular assignment that we had to do.
Mm.
And I couldn't move past, it was a portrait of some kind we were doing, and I couldn't move past the shape of the mouth. It wasn't right. I wasn't happy with it. And instead of the teacher really helping me work through that, she just looked at me and said, "You'll never be an artist because you're too much of a perfectionist."
Mm.
And I mean, that could have been her own baggage that came out,
Yes.
and it's just unfortunate sometimes the things that we say, we don't quite realize how they land
Yeah, yeah.
within
Liz Gilbert talks about this, and you probably know her book. What's it called? What's her book called about art? And Elizabeth Gilbert, she talks about, I think she calls them art scars or something like that.
Oh, no.
What's her book? Big Magic.
Yes.
Yeah, Big Magic, I think it is. And then
Yeah,
she talks about how we get damaged along the way by people say certain things or whatever, and we take them on as gospel, or we
that's
assume that
right.
it means something. It's not what they were saying, but we take it on as something else or whatever. Yeah.
That's right. And in my case, it was even me. Like in year 1, I was the one that was causing the damage. So,
Yes.
there's no judgment over this. It's just an unfortunate part of life. But this was my story. This was my history and my relationship with art all the way through.
Yes.
And
That is still my story.
so, oh, sorry.
That's still my story.
Yeah,
I think I had a lot of people around me who were good at art, and I just wasn't, and I didn't get it. But also, I was, because of, without going into all the details, because I had a lot of stuff in my life that related more to kind of survival and more to practical things or whatever. I just sort of thought that art was a waste of time as well. I needed practical skills. I wanted to, grow up, get out of the house, get a job, whatever, and be independent. And because my whole thoughts were about that,
yes.
art just didn't factor in there. But also, I wasn't very good at it, and I got laughed at for not being very good at it as well. So I just try to avoid art as much as possible. And if I go to a workshop or something now and they get out the crayons, I kind of go, I get really uncomfortable when the crayons come out, where I know other people kind of just get excited and they just jump right into it. I'm like, oh, they're going to make me do this. Oh.
Yeah, it really brings up a lot of emotions for people.
Yeah, it
And
does.
as an artist, I've been there too.
Mm,
Like this was my journey as well. Like I didn't have art classes from when I was a young child. Like I grew up believing I wasn't good at art. I grew up believing this is not something that I can do. It's not my skill set.
mm,
I had words spoken of me like you're never going to be an artist, and these are things that so there was a part of my brain, like my deep subconscious, that really shut the door
mm.
to any of those things. And then it became about, and it's almost like, it's funny you say it's survival, because then it almost becomes like a self-protective mode
Yes.
to not put yourself in those situations,
Yeah. Yeah,
or
it
you're going
is.
to have to draw, or you're going to have to do something, or it brings up all those uncomfortable feelings because you're trying to protect yourself
Mm, yeah.
from the awfulness of those emotions again. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm,
I grew up thinking I wasn't good at art, and then out of the blue in my 30s, I got this strange desire to start drawing. And it was just like this niggling thought, and then it was persistent, and then it was more persistent, and I'm like, fine, I'll just like get a sketchbook and like a pencil, like,
mm.
and in my head, I'm like, we'll put this to rest, like that. I will prove that I'm not
I'm
good
not
at
an artist.
almost like just to shut up this insistence, right? I'll do it.
Mm,
And so I sat down one time and I just tried to draw something. And at the end of it, I went, actually, that's not bad. And just it actually looked like it was supposed to look like. It
mm,
wasn't Monet, wasn't, Rembrandt, it wasn't by any means some fantastic piece of artwork,
mm.
but it was recognizable. And I
Yeah.
think what I saw in that was potential,
Yeah.
and I saw something that I could work with. And it's really interesting because from that time, now it's just, well, I do the things. And I remember when I was 15, so it must have been just after that high school teacher had told me. It must have been not too long after that. And I was at my dad's cricket game, watching him play, and I saw a seagull sitting on a post, standing on a post. And the seagull was standing on one leg, which is not uncommon for birds. And I remember my attention being fixed on this seagull, and I looked at it and I thought, it's only got one leg. And as it flew off, I realized it actually really did only have one leg. It sort of went a bit over my head as it went, and I went, it didn't have another leg. And I just blurted out this word, that seagull only had one leg. And I didn't know, but there were a couple standing behind me, and one of them asked if I was an artist. And I laughed myself silly at them because I'm not an artist, right? And then they said to me, oh, no, it's really easy. All you do is you draw or paint what you see. So when I'm in my 30s and I'm trying to build these skills, these words come back to me. Just draw or paint what you see. And so I did this exercise, and I thought, well, I'd really like to draw faces. I really feel drawn to faces. I'd really like to draw them, but I have no idea how to do it. Right? So I'm like, well, if I'm supposed to just draw what I see, then I can get a photo of one of my kids and blow it up really big. And rather than try and do the whole face, I thought, well, I'll just focus on a small part. What's a small thing that I can do? So I thought, well, I don't have no idea how to draw an ear. I'll try to draw an ear. So I zoom up really big, so the ear's like this big. It's quite large. It's probably about 5 centimeters large for those that are listening. And I just draw what I see. And what happened was the biggest epic battle between my left hemisphere of my brain that tells me I know how to draw an ear. It looks like a C, because that's the symbol of an ear when we first learn to draw. And then my right hemisphere of my brain saying that's not what it looks like. And so I had this big struggle between my left and my right hemisphere. And I kept shutting down my left hemisphere of my brain and kept just drawing what I saw. And it involved a lot of erasing out. But at the end of it, I went, oh my gosh, that is a really realistic looking ear. And I had no training and I had no classes. I'd done nothing except follow that instruction, just draw what you see. And it's really true. It's simple. The idea of drawing, the idea of art itself is really simple. It can be difficult to execute, as that epic battle in my head showed.
Yeah.
It can be very difficult. But the idea of it's actually really simple.
Yeah.
And so I just started following what I call follow the joy. So these are things that started to make my soul sing. I'm starting to think, oh, this actually really feeds me and makes me feel good on a whole different level I hadn't anticipated. And so I started doing things to follow the joy. And I tried different paints and I experimented with different things. And the things that lit up my soul inside, they're the things that I went, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I know it kind of helped me get through the big clutter of the art world, right? Because it's so big and there are so many different creative expressions.
So it sounds like you're saying you kind of listen to intuition, listening to your gut, and kind of just going where the energy was. Is that sort of another way of saying
100%.
what you just said? Yeah.
Yep, 100%. To me, I call it follow the joy, because those are the things that bring me joy. Like I literally feel joy inside when I do those things.
And when you're doing art, when you're painting or drawing or whatever it is, you've said you feel the joy, but do you also feel, does that help you reduce things like stress and anxiety because you're in the moment? Because I know a lot of people, I know my sister for a while was making earrings, and she said that, and she has some anxiety issues, and she said that when she was making the earrings, that it was really good for her anxiety because it actually just kept her really present and in the moment.
Yeah.
So does the sort of art that you're doing, does that have the same effect for you?
100%. Like the rest of the world disappears. It wasn't always that way. I've had to work through so many things like imposter syndrome. Who am I? I haven't got an art degree. I haven't gone to a fine art school. Like there's a lot of stuff that comes up once you start, I think, following your true life's purpose and all of these things. I think a lot of negativity comes up from within. Even it's not even necessarily from other people, sometimes it's from
Yes.
within yourself, like that imposter syndrome, self-doubt. I had a fear of failure,
Yeah.
I had a fear of success.
Yep.
Which, well, that's really funny, isn't it? Because not only do you not want to try, but you really don't want to get good at it.
Yes. Yeah. There's so many fears that we have,
Oh,
and so much of it, like some of it is programmed by society and by other people, whatever. But a lot of it we put on ourselves as well. So much
yeah,
self-talk that we create, and we create so many rules about what we can't do, or what we can do, or what we're allowed to do, or what we're capable of, and all of that. And
yeah,
we go through life with this narrative, like my narrative about not being good at art.
that's
I'm aware that it's a narrative.
yeah.
It's accurate, but it doesn't mean I could never be, I suppose. But I've just got that narrative in my head, and it's a very strong one that I've had for my whole life, or as long as I can remember anyway.
Well, it's funny you say programming and all of those things from childhood, because
Mm,
that's actually the thing that actually released me from all of the things that were holding me back.
mm.
So remember I told you about, being a 3-year-old and being told I wasn't allowed to paint.
Yes.
I've just gone through some neuro-linguistic programming therapies,
Mhm.
and that has dealt with all those things. So now my subconscious believes and acknowledges that I am allowed to paint.
Yes.
And I had this breakthrough about 3 weeks ago, and I have not been able to stop painting since then, which
Okay.
is which is why my emails are now starting to pile up a lot, because I've had this incredible freedom. Now my subconscious tells me, instead of I'm not allowed to paint, it's I'm allowed to paint.
Mm. You
And I
change that
am an
programming.
artist, absolutely. And I am an artist, and I pursue excellence. And the reason why I talk about excellence is because perfectionism kind of implies there's one right way to do something,
Mm.
and all the other ways are wrong.
Yes.
Whereas excellence shows that there's lots of different ways to get the best. It's
Yeah.
not just one way, there are many ways
Yes.
to get
And
the
and
best.
and when we work at, I don't know if you're familiar with Brené Brown's work, but I quote her a lot. But when we do things based on perfectionism, when we're being perfectionist about things, what we're trying to do is avoid shame, blame, and judgment. So perfectionism is associated with trying to mitigate your risk, or trying to make sure that you don't get kicked out of the tribe, or shunned, or laughed at, or whatever it is. So when you do something from a place of perfectionism, the underneath driver is a much more kind of negative driver, that's kind of about your self-worth, and it's just a lot of connotations associated with that, that's really kind of negative energy and really kind of anxious energy.
Yeah,
Whereas when you do something from a perspective of just healthy striving, just trying to do well because you want to do well, because it's you enjoy it, and
that's right.
that's a very different energy. So that's a difference, like from a that sort of definition. That's what you were describing there on what you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got this um, new energy now. Like my energy is completely new. It's like it's pure, and it doesn't have all that negativity attached to it. So when I paint now, I'm actually painting at, and I laugh because I describe it as I'm painting with the confidence of a 3-year-old. Like
Yeah,
I haven't painted with this level of confidence since I was 3. I'm putting paint on the canvas, and there's no doubt, there's no fear, there's no anxiety of getting it wrong.
yeah,
It's just, if it's not okay, if it's not where I want it to look like, that's okay. I can still
yeah.
fix it. Like there's
Well,
no,
that's the thing too. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen?
yes, it's all these stories
Like,
that
what,
we tell
you're not gonna
ourselves.
die from no one's gonna die because you did a bad painting or because you made a mistake, you know what I mean? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And then when you look at art, and when
Yeah,
you look at modern art these days, I'm putting on my judgmental, face here, but when you look at some modern art, it's just I think some of it's revolting anyway. But, art is in the eye of the beholder. Art is
it
very
really is.
subjective.
Oh yeah.
So,
I
is
was
there
like,
such thing as the wrong art? No, it's just
no,
like you
that's,
or some other people may or may not like it. It's just simple as that.
yeah, and it's okay to have a preference. I was talking with someone last night at a dinner actually, and they were talking how they were told by an artist that because they didn't like the work, that they didn't understand it. And I was very quick to say, you actually are allowed to have that opinion. You're allowed to not like something. Whether you understand it or not, you're allowed to look at something and go, I like that, I don't like that. Because there's not a piece of artwork that speaks to every single person in the world.
No, that's right. But also, but if we want to be snobs and we want to be, very superior to everybody, then of course we understand it, and you just don't. So you're ignorant. You're not as evolved as me. That's that snobbery stuff that you see in the art world.
Well,
Yeah, I don't understand it. Yeah, it's a toilet, whatever it is.
one of,
Terrible me. I must be really not evolved. All right, yeah, whatever. And you do well. Good on you. You're
I think one of
amazing.
the best things about being about creativity itself is that there's two parts to it. So there's
Mm,
the first part, which is the creation process, and that's where the artist, the author, whatever the creativity is, the musician, they put the energy and they put the effort into creating the thing that's being created, the artwork, whatever that looks like, whatever that is. But that's only actually half the story,
yeah.
because when the audience comes to it, they actually bring their context to the painting, to the novel, to the
Yeah.
concert. Like they bring their story to it, and to me, that's the most beautiful part of it. Is art is not designed just to be art. Art is
Mm,
designed to be enjoyed, appreciated, thought about, disliked even.
mm.
Like
Yeah. A lot
that's
of
actually half
musicians
the story.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of musicians say that. I think was it Dave Grohl who sort of said that, when people ask the meaning of songs and things, he I think he's the one that said that ultimately the meaning of the song is whatever it means to you. So,
Yeah.
like, he describes it, and a lot of musicians I know have sort of said that this when they write a song and record a song and put it out into the universe, it's like they've birthed that song. Now, what that song becomes, they're in no control over that. So it might have a certain meaning for them, but for someone else, it's their breakup song. For someone else, it's their inspirational song. For someone else, they hate it. For someone else, they think it's whatever. But that it becomes, and people relate the lyrics or the mood or whatever to whatever's going on for them based on who they are and their experience, whatever. And nobody's wrong. It's
Exactly.
just it's just what the art is for them. So, you're right. I think that's the thing about art it's very subjective, and we do, once an artist births a piece of work, whatever it is, then the world will do what it wants with it ultimately. And it's not
Absolutely.
necessarily wrong. It's just their own
Yeah.
thing.
I think it stops being ours. It was like that musician you were talking about. It stops being ours and it becomes the world's,
Yes.
in a
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. 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 Um, yeah. So that's kind of my journey, I think,
Yeah.
as an
Yeah.
artist is this tumultuous journey of,
Yeah.
like most people, I can't do that. That's not my thing, to actually realizing this is something I really love to do and learning how to get good at.
To the point now that you've actually turned it into a business.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And while I'm still building and growing my skills, I'm teaching beginners, and I'm, helping. My biggest passion is helping people get back in touch with their creativity. I,
Yes.
I just love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's brilliant.
Because, yeah, like I was talking before about the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain,
Yeah.
when I tell people that I'm an artist, quite often I'll get, oh, I'm not creative.
Mhm.
And so then my little side question is, have you had brain surgery? And I ask that seriously as well, because some people have had brain surgery and you never
Yeah.
know what's going on with
I
someone.
actually do have brain damage, but I can't say that it's from that. This predates the brain damage. So.
So you still have a right hemisphere of your brain. You still have the
Yeah.
capacity to be creative.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people have forgotten,
Yeah.
that they have the capacity to be creative.
Mm.
And
So
we've just,
why is creativity so important then?
well, it's so important because creativity helps us express part of our mental, emotional, even our soul. I think I would go on to say, like, it's a really big part of who we are, and
Mm.
it's just an expression of that. Um, and when we do those things, it does things like lower our cortisol levels. So when we're stressed, it's actually one of the things that can reduce stress, like exercise, like meditation, like all these other forms, like being creative is actually a way to reduce your stress.
Yeah,
Like,
because like we said before, you're being present, but also you might be sort of getting joy from, like as you were describing,
yeah,
or just releasing something. So you might be birthing out, releasing out some emotional thing or something, or drawing something, or writing lyrics about whatever it is you're doing about something in your life. So you might be sort of somewhat processing maybe something in your life through the art as well.
yeah.
Mm.
And I think there seems to be this bit of an obstacle for people. It's almost like, well, I'm not at this particular level, so therefore I can't do it.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
me in year one, like, comparing myself to that other girl that had more skills than I did,
Mm.
and disqualifying myself because I wasn't at her skill level.
Mm.
And that's completely wrong. Like, so, I mean, art is an expression. I mean, we talked earlier about it's only half the story when we create it.
Mm.
But you know what? You also have permission for it to be the only story. You don't have to share that with anybody.
No.
You don't have to. I mean,
Mm.
I'm one of these people that once I find something, I love to share it. I
Yes.
love to tell people
Yeah.
about it. And so for me, it's actually a natural part of who I am to share what I create.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And
I'm the
so,
same with music. I don't create the music, but boy, oh boy, do all my friends and anyone who follows me on Facebook, they know what music I'm into at the time because I just go on and on and on about
that's great. I love that. I
it.
love that because it's really interesting because we were talking before about, the creator versus the observer,
Mm,
for want of a better word.
yes,
And so there's actively participating in the creation process.
yes.
But then there's also that, and I don't like to use the word passively observing because I don't. Yeah, I don't like active versus passive, but passive I don't know if is really the right word to describe when you're participating as an observer.
Yeah, I don't
You're
think it's
still
passive. I think there's
participating.
an action associated with that.
Yeah, I
And because
agree.
that's what even who is it that now who is a philosopher or someone said something about how art is changed by the observer? Who said that? It's some famous
Oh,
I don't know, I can't remember who it
I
was,
don't
but
know.
there's actually kind of I don't know if it's something in philosophy or something, but there's a saying along the lines of that art literally by looking, once you observe it, you've changed it. So
Yeah,
I actually don't think it's passive. And I know for me, from a music point of view, it's not passive for me at all. Like I feel like there's certain songs that I might not have had anything to do with their creation. I have had nothing to do with their creation, but they feel like they're embedded in my soul and they
yeah.
feel like they were written for me and they speak for me and they feel like part of my DNA.
Oh my gosh,
And
yes.
that's how music feels for me, right? And so that's so completely not passive for me. That's why I get so excitable about it and people hear about it constantly and they're, oh, shut up, Fiona, stop telling me about it. but,
Yeah,
but that's how music is for me.
yeah.
And so whether I've been part of the creation or not, I get very attached to it and it really embeds in my DNA.
In
And
a way,
so
you
that's
make it
not
your own, don't you?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
And so you end up with this beautiful space of someone who's actively creating something, but then
mm,
someone who's actively, let's say, participating as an observer.
yes, yeah,
But both things will actually reduce your cortisol levels.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you don't have to be the one that's doing the active creating
yeah,
process.
yeah,
You can be the one who listens. You can be the one. I
yeah,
mean, how many people have had a stressful day and they've put music on?
yeah,
Maybe turned it up really loud in the car on the way home.
yes, yeah,
And it's done its magic to
yeah,
bring their cortisol levels down and
yeah,
brought them to a beautiful space so
yeah.
that when they walk into the door, they're more able to, cope with the pressures of home life then.
Yeah, yeah, and look how many people have used, Alanis Morissette's album as their breakup music or whatever. Or like going to concerts and, you go to a concert and, there's something about like all of the people there are there for the same reason and everyone's,
Yes.
or, largely the same reason and there's a joy and you feel like part of something bigger than you when you're at a concert. So there's so many different layers of, you feel like you're part of community, you feel like, and just that couple of hours or whatever it is in that stadium or in that concert hall, there's something special happens, a special transfer of energy happens in that place.
Yeah.
So there is, and the only art that I can say from a painting kind of point of view, because I'm not, I like art and stuff, but I just don't know that much about it, and I don't. I'm not one of those people that goes to a like an art gallery and spends sort of 20 minutes in front of one painting. I might kind of just think, oh, that's nice, and then go on to the next one. But the
Mhm.
one piece of art that did kind of really, I felt like a real shift when I was looking at it is the now it's just dropped in my head, Starry Night,
Yes.
Van Gogh. I saw that down at the museum in not museum art gallery in Canberra, the National Gallery, quite a few years ago now. And first of all, it's huge. It's really big. But secondly, I just kind of was just looking at it and I was just so drawn into it and so mesmerized by it. And then I also had this like Fred aha moment because that's when I realized that Starry Night, the song, the Vincent, the song was about Van Gogh. I was like, oh, it's like this, like bit piece of the puzzle just clicked in, and my brain connected all of the things. So I understood this song that I'd always loved. He was referring to this painter and this painting, and it kind of all clicked in together. So I kind of had the Fred moment, but I also just had this. I knew I was in the presence of a beautiful artwork, and I felt really just drawn into it. So I get why, like, that's my experience of that kind of art, and I haven't had a lot of art experience in that way, but I understand where the idea of it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other ways that creativity can be important, so it helps us be in the moment. It
Mm.
helps us express ourselves in a way
Yeah.
that, perhaps we find difficult with just words.
Yes.
Um, it can be a safe place to process.
Yes.
Like, I do journaling, not every day, but certainly more frequently, most days, I would say.
Mm.
Even that might be a stretch, actually. But I do journal frequently. And
Mm.
one of the reasons I love that is because it helps me understand my thoughts. It
Yes.
helps me get clarity on situations. It helps me even do like an internal examination if I'm up with a difficult situation. Okay, well, is there anything that I've done in this situation, that could have been done better? Or, how am I going to handle this? What's my responsibility? What's their responsibility? And just having a safe place. I mean, I don't share my journal with everybody. That's my journal.
Yes.
That's a place where I express all these things, and I express gratitude for all the beautiful things I have in my world.
Mm.
My family, being able to create, starting an art business.
Mm.
These are all things I'm incredibly grateful for. So, and we know the benefits that gratitude
Mm.
has on
Yeah.
us, on our mental health, on our emotional health.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think it rewires your brain, gratitude. It really, and there is a lot of, if you look at the data, there is a lot of data for what gratitude does for us, but it simply just kind of changes your perspective, doesn't it? Because that's the difference between, it's what you see, right? So if everywhere you go, you look for a reason that the world's against you and everybody hates you and everything's bad and all the rest of it, you will find evidence for that everywhere you go. But if everywhere you go, you look for evidence that there's beauty and there's good things and there's good people and the world's that supporting you and the universe is supporting you, or God, or whatever it is, your belief system, you
Yeah.
will find a lot of evidence of that. So, that's why people can have the same experience. You've been at a restaurant with someone and you walk away and they're kind of, oh, terrible service, this and that. And you were kind of thinking, oh, that was really nice. I really enjoyed that. And the food was really good or whatever. And this person sort of has a whole different, opinion to it. And you
Yes.
had the same experience, but they saw it in a completely different way. And not only that, but you also see with people like that, them rewriting the story of what happened to
Yes.
turn it into bigger than Ben Hur, bigger and better, or bigger than Ben Hur. That shows my age. No, most people probably don't even know it, but it's like a 4-hour movie or something that was made in the
There's a
1950s or
reason it was
30s.
an epic.
I've got all these sayings that were like my grandmother's sayings, and she was born in 1927 and died quite a few years ago now. So it's like it's funny, but I say these sayings, think, oh my god, how old am I? But you see these people trying to convince themselves of the story, and then also trying to convince the people around them of the story. We all had a bad time, didn't we? And it was terrible, and you know that's gratitude. Sort of teaches you to look for the good stuff and it kind of can rewire that and take you out of that constantly looking for the negative and constantly finding negative everywhere. Is that
Yeah,
sort of your experience of it?
absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, like that rewiring, it happens over the course of our life.
Yeah.
Like all these experiences, all these things that, whether self inflicted or inflicted by others,
Mm.
good or bad, they shape us.
Yes. Yeah.
And they rewire us. And fortunately, we have tools that can help us undo some of the rewiring that's been unhelpful, like
Mm.
the unhelpful relationship I had around art.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that was those rewirings were really unhelpful. And during the session, I could literally feel my brain being rewired.
Yeah.
And my conscious mind is thinking, this can't be possible.
Yes. Yeah.
But then I had such rapid eye movement, I knew that I couldn't control that even if I wanted to
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
speed. And I could literally feel my brain being rewired
Yeah.
in the moment,
So
which,
that was a great shift for you.
yeah, it was a very, very great shift.
Mm.
And I think we all start in this beautiful place of being naturally creative.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So.
George Land, back in, there's a really interesting study done back in 1968.
Mhm.
There was a research scientist called George Land, and his partner, that was his fellow researcher, was Beth Jarman.
Mhm.
And they were approached by NASA
Mm.
to create this creativity test.
Yes.
And the reason why they wanted this creativity test to be created was because they were trying to get to the moon, but they
Mm.
had these massive problems that they couldn't fix.
Mm.
And so they realized they needed the creative problem solving. They
Yes.
needed to have the most creative people on the problem. So they got them to design this creativity test to find the creative geniuses in their organization. And they did that. And we all know in 1969, they made it to the moon,
Mm.
which is brilliant. But then George Land and Betha left there with this study going, what can we do with this creativity test?
Yes.
So they had started posing some questions. Well, at what point do people become creative? Was their initial question, as George explains, and he says, so this is simple for 4 and 5-year-olds to do. Let's give it to 4 and 5-year-olds. So they did, and they were absolutely astounded. We aren't quite as much, but they were absolutely astounded that 98% of 4 and 5-year-olds are considered creative geniuses according to NASA standards.
Wow.
98% of
Oh,
4 and 5-year-olds.
it shows you how much programming goes into us, like, when we go from that
Oh my gosh.
because we're so innocent and so connect and I think that children are I personally think that small children are very connected to, like, whether it's the spirit world or whatever it is, but I think they're just connected. They're just connected into the energy, whatever it is, life force, energy, universe, whatever. But also they're fearless and they're not sort of thinking, oh, I shouldn't do this or that. They don't have all that crap and all those beliefs.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so it shows you that it's those little and we do it for protective reasons, but those little stories and those little narratives and those programs and things that we build up around us, like there's a big wall of protection that actually kind of hold us, imprison us, really, don't they?
They really do. They really do. So George Land even said that uncreative behavior and thinking is learned.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because they decided to turn this study into a longitudinal study. So they
Yeah.
took the 4 and 5-year-olds, came back to them 5 years later. They're now 10.
Mhm.
And the 10-year-olds, they gave them the exact same test they gave them as 4 and 5-year-olds. And
Yeah.
this time, only 30% were considered creative geniuses.
Yes.
And you think in 5 years,
Mhm.
they'd have gone from 98 to 30%. And that's
Yeah.
almost a 70% drop.
Yeah.
Like, it's just heartbreaking to hear, that. And then when they were 15, they did the study again and it had reduced down to 12.
Yep.
And by that point, the teachers were so disheartened by the results of the test that they asked them not to continue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they took this study then to the adult population. And I think they did over 280,000 adults. They gave them this creativity test.
Mm.
And only 2% are considered creative geniuses according to NASA's studies.
Yeah.
2%. It literally flips from
Yeah.
when you are 4 and 5. Only 2% of 4 and 5-year-olds were not considered creative geniuses.
Yeah.
And when I say creative geniuses, that doesn't mean they weren't creative.
Yeah.
They just weren't at the genius level.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And there's 2 things there, like, one is, like, what we were just talking about, all of those stories and narratives and programming and all the rest of it, and the other side of it also would be just be the burdens of adulthood, that adulting is hard and,
oh
we're
my
worrying about how we're gonna pay the bills and how we're gonna feed the kids and how we're gonna do the thing and the thing going on at work and all the things, and because we've got this, if you've got a to-do list, 3,700 miles, and you've got under financial pressure, and you're responsible for your family and you've got all these things going on in your mind, I think it would be very hard to shift into a creative mind when you're
well,
feeling that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, stress is the number one enemy and killer of creativity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've got on one hand that creativity reduces stress,
Yeah.
but then on the other hand, if you're already stressed, trying to be creative is impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to
And
just.
so you end up in this catch-22. You
Yeah.
go, how on earth how can I be creative? How can I reduce my stress because this is not working?
Yeah.
And I kind of touched on it a little bit before when
Yeah.
I talked about putting the music up really loud in your car,
Mm.
because you can still benefit. Like, the way around this catch 22 is actually to become a participating observer,
Yes.
to be the one actually observing the art. You don't need to be creating it
Mm.
to reduce your stress levels.
Yeah.
So be the participator first.
Yeah.
Be the one that's observing and appreciating the art, and find what you enjoy looking at or listening to, or
Yeah.
reading, whatever the form of creativity is. Just participate in that as an observer, as
Yep.
the intended audience, and that will reduce your stress levels. And
Yeah.
then you can find that when it's time to be creative, you then have the capacity, because you already have it. You have the capacity to do it. There's this little hack that I get people to do. It's really fun. So I get people to write their name with their dominant hand that they normally write with, as they would normally write it. And it's not a
Yes.
problem for most people, because our language is stored in our left hemisphere of our brain.
Mhm.
And then I tell people, okay, now I want you to hold your pen like a wand. This
Mm.
can be an orchestral wand, it can be a Harry Potter wand, fairy godmother, whatever you choose. But it's a wand, and you have to write your name holding your pen like a wand.
Mm.
And the left hemisphere of the brain has a little hissy fit because, oh my gosh, that's a bit tricky.
How do you hold a wand? It's like you're holding a pen like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you're
So,
writing your
but just
name.
visually for anyone who's listening at home, so we're just holding on, like, to the end of the pen, holding on to the opposite end of the tip of the pen, like a wand, and holding the pen up in the air, sort of thing. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
how you think of a
And
wand.
so then you
Okay.
try to write your name on a piece of paper, just as you did with your dominant hand, and you'll
As a
find that
wand.
you can write your name.
Yeah.
It's a little clunkier. It doesn't look the same as your normal handwriting, but you did it.
Yeah.
And the reason you could do it is because when the left hemisphere had a little hiccup and went, I don't know how to do that, the right hemisphere of the brain came in and said, I know how to do that. Don't you worry.
Ah, okay. So you're connecting both sides there.
So you're actually circumventing your left hemisphere to go straight to your right hemisphere. It's
Yeah.
actually one of the reasons why a lot of artists hold their paintbrush like that, in that wand fashion,
Okay.
because when you hold it like you do a pen,
Mm.
it actually engages the critical thinking side of your brain.
Oh,
It
okay.
engages all the thoughts around, oh, this isn't good enough. Why did you do that?
So if you wanna get rid of all those thoughts, hold your pen like a wand.
Hold your pen like a wand. Hold your pen like a
Must
wand.
take a while to write things down.
Yeah, that would. It's really helpful if you can verbalize and then record yourself while holding your pen like a wand.
Yeah, yeah, and that's how I've started, just started little bits and pieces of putting together a book, which is, don't get excited, anyone, because it's a long, long way away. But I've just started by doing verbally because I have trouble writing it down. But yeah, if you're holding the pen like a wand, I could, because you're not going to write your opus that way. But
Yeah,
if you're doing that and then you say verbally, sort of getting the information down, that would be a really useful way of
yeah,
clearing that.
yeah. And
Mm.
the right hemisphere is where creativity comes from. The right hemisphere of the brain is where that outside the box brilliance comes from.
Mm.
And it's also where things like creative problem solving. So if you have a problem and you're really having trouble,
Yeah.
try brainstorming with a friend and hold your pen like a wand
Yeah.
while you're doing it.
While you're doing it. Okay.
Yep.
And that's actually the other thing about creativity that's really important is that the way I see creativity, besides all of the beautiful things, paintings and music and all the things, the sort of art sort of stuff, creativity is also really important in. So for me, I'm a really big, passionate believer in free speech, and the reason I believe in it is we can't have really good thoughts or have creative problem solving if we can't talk. So we
Yes.
actually have to be able to say, and even if we're having a conversation, you and I, and we say the wrong thing 10 times before we get to the right thing, I feel like you've got to have permission to get it wrong 10 times or 100 times or whatever to get it right. And, you see in populations where they've got, communism or socialism or whatever, and people aren't allowed to have free thinking or free thought or free conversation, the creativity and the problem solving goes down, because to solve a problem, you actually have to be creative. And to be creative, you have to be willing to be wrong or make a mistake or whatever. And so I think that as a society, we have to understand that this isn't just about paintings, it's about
Yes.
problem solving. So whether it be problem solving in science and medicine, or whether it be problem solving in like the sort of stuff that Elon Musk is doing, and like catching rocket things that come back, I don't know what it is, but the rocket thing that came back and it caught it with an arm, whatever that is. I mean, that's phenomenal. Whatever, to problem solving for that, you have to actually be willing to get it wrong. And so you actually, just the same as you do with painting a picture, discussion and talking and having kind of debates or whatever, it has to be okay to get it wrong, and to keep going with the conversation and keep going with the debate or whatever until you kind of nut it out and you get it right. That's another way that creativity is really, really important for humankind, really.
Absolutely. And you've just described my creative process for problem solving that I run through with clients. So,
Yes.
I show them, well, first you've got to identify the problem,
Yeah.
and actually have a good look, because
Yeah.
maybe you are part of the problem,
Yes. Yeah.
like actually identify what the problem really is. And then when you're brainstorming, that's not when you're judging the ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're coming up with solutions, that's not the time you're actually figuring out what's a good one and what's not. And you've
Yes.
usually got to go through all the really obvious things
Yes.
before your brain can actually start spitting out the left thinking or the right brain hemisphere stuff,
Yes.
all the outside the box brilliant ideas
Yeah,
that
so
you
if you
perhaps
shut it
would never
down
have
right at
thought
the
about.
beginning, is that you're wrong, you're not allowed to, you cancel, whatever. If you do that, then you don't get
Yeah.
to continue it and actually come up with the solution. Yeah,
You do, yeah.
yeah,
But you have to go through all that process, and then once you've exhausted all the potential possibility and possible solutions, that's then the time to go. Well, and our left brain is important.
yeah,
It's super important. We need our left and our right brain working together.
mm,
Because the left brain then looks at the ideas and it says, okay, that one's not going to work because of these reasons.
mm,
This one's not going to work for that, but that's a really great idea. And
mm,
I can't actually think of a reason why that wouldn't work. And I would never have thought of that if I'd just been focused on the ordinary stuff. So,
yeah.
you can go,
You've got to
yes,
have
that's
the
going to work.
space to create, and that requires letting it be wrong first.
It does. It does.
And knowing it probably will be wrong first, and that might be wrong many times over, and that's okay.
I'll tell you a secret. One of my favorite things about painting in layers is that I can always do another layer.
Yeah. Well, that's why WD-40 is called WD-40?
Because
Apparently
it's
it
all
took them
40.
40 times to get the formula right or something. So,
Pretty good to only have to do 40 versions.
yeah. Yeah, I think what is Thomas Edison, he's saying was something like thousands of times or whatever,
Yeah, he found out 1,000 ways how not to
how not
create
to do
light
it.
bulbs.
Yeah, 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 exactly. So like I'm looking at the time and thinking, oh, we could talk forever, but what are some simple things that people could do to become more creative?
Yeah, sure. So we've covered some of this stuff already, but I'll just reiterate anyway. So high stress levels are the enemy of creativity.
Yeah.
So come into it not trying to be creative yourself, but come into it as a participant, come into it as an observer, come into it, enjoying it or
Yes.
thinking about it or even disliking it, because you're still actually engaging with it, even if you don't particularly like it. And then there's the follow the joy.
Yes.
So once you are in that space, excuse me, once you are in that space where your stress levels are low enough and you have space, and I think another point that I wanted to make was making time and space to be creative, because another enemy of creativity is hurry and
Yes.
busy. And unfortunately, so many of us are hurried and busy. And, this is, I'm just as bad as everybody else at the hurried and busy.
Yes.
But I have to intentionally give myself time. No, today is a painting day. Today I'm doing this. Today, and actually creating space in my time to do
Yes.
the things. And creativity is limitless. Like, I think so many people limit art. We've talked a little bit, well, actually quite a lot, about creativity being more than just visual art, because it is. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of problem solving. It's a way of interacting with the world, and it has many different mediums and many different expressions and so many opportunities to engage in it. And I like to tell people that I'm okay at spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are like, I have a very basic level of spreadsheets. I can do the sum function and I can do a couple of other functions that
You can do
help
better than
me
me.
parts of a spreadsheet, right, for what you need it for. I'm like, I can total up that column and I can total up that column. All these things, I can do those things. But there are some people out there who can create, and I use the word create intentionally, who create amazing spreadsheets with the most complex formulas and ways of presenting information. And that still requires creativity, because
For sure.
creativity itself just means creating something out of nothing.
Yes.
So creativity can still be something logical.
Yes.
It just means creating it and expressing something in a way.
So I've created a podcast or
You
two.
have,
So
you
therefore,
have,
I'm a
you're,
creative.
this is a creative process. And I bet you love doing this.
I do love doing this, and it's
Yes,
something I have created. So there you go.
right. And there's joy in doing it too, isn't it? And
There
each
is.
episode you get
Yeah.
to create again.
Yeah.
And there's a novelty as well, because each
Yeah.
time you speak to someone different, the conversation's different.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It always goes in places that you're not expecting, and it's great. And even if you're talking about the same topic, it can be quite different talking to different people.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when I say start putting time aside, like, that doesn't mean, oh, suddenly I'm going to go to an art workshop or I'm going to go to this big event.
Mm,
Start small.
mm,
Start small. When I was trying to get back into a sketching habit,
mm,
I got this little book that's called like 5-minute sketches or something like that.
mm,
And it was something for me to do at the end of my day while I was sitting watching TV.
mm.
I just grabbed a sketchbook, grabbed a pencil, and then started to draw these 5-minute sketches. And it wasn't me coming up with the ideas, even, because this is how fried my brain is at the end of the day. There's not much originality going on at
Mm.
9 o'clock at night for me. So I'm following someone's step-by-step instructions on how to draw it. I'm
Yeah.
an artist. I could probably do that if I want to when I'm not half asleep.
Mm. Well, you
But
could
that
even
was
get a
when I
colour-in
had
book,
5
couldn't
minutes.
you? There's plenty of adult colour-in books now, so you could even get an adult colour-in book and just get in the habit of sort of doing some colouring in while you just have a bit of
Absolutely.
spare time, or while you're watching the telly, or while you're waiting for something, or whatever it is. But
Yes.
you can just sort of like sneak in little moments where you're doing something that's creative or a bit more fun, or
Yeah.
yeah,
I know of people that have written entire books in like 5 and 10 and 15-minute segments.
yes, yeah,
Just when they've had a moment, they've
yeah.
got it on their phone and they just write out a book. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know if I could do that,
A
but
friend of mine did it when he was on the school run. So he'd drop off the kids at school, and then when he was on his way back home or to work or wherever he was going, he would just record just on those times, and that he created a whole book that way. So
yes. Yeah, there
that's
is
active use of time.
there is time in this space. And I
Yeah.
think is if we can remove those barriers that we have for accessing that creativity.
Yes.
And if one of those things is, well, I have to share it with the world, well, actually, you don't.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
don't have to share it with the world.
Yeah.
This could
That's
be
the
just
rules.
for you,
Yes.
and that's perfectly okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think these are the simple things people can do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I know that we have already talked about creativity being good for your health. Is there anything in particular that you think that we missed that we need to add to that in regards to creativity and health?
Um, I think we've covered everything. I
Yeah,
think
I think
I
we
was
have.
thinking, yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking about because I've already talked about my journaling.
Mm.
I've already talked about,
We talked about gratitude.
I love music too.
Yeah.
I feel like there's maybe a song in me one day. It might not be for the world, and that's okay.
Yeah. But that's okay. It doesn't have to be for the world, like you just said.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm.
There's untapped and but I have written poetry in the past,
Yeah.
and again, that has certainly not been for the world's consumption.
Yes.
And I actually mean that because that's so deeply personal to me.
Mm.
You know,
Yes.
that's one of the ways that I really get to express how I'm feeling, where my headspace is,
Yeah.
and so um, that's a more personal, creative thing for me to share with the world. But
Yes.
again, it's getting it out there, getting it through. Although I do have to say, so when I wrote a memoir, so my husband went through PTSD
Mm.
as a part of his military service. He was affected by trauma and came home with PTSD, which, as you can imagine, completely changed our world. And as we got through that, he got help that he needed. It helped me through one of the lowest times in my life. Community was so important.
Yes.
And then coming through the end of it, we realized that with so many people feel like PTSD is an end of the road sort of journey,
Mm.
but it doesn't have to be.
Mm.
He's come through that. He's on the other side of that now, and we want to share that hope with people. So
Mm.
I wrote our story as a memoir, and it was actually incredibly difficult to write
Mm.
because it took me back to those moments, and
Yes.
it took me back to those things. And for some people, that would be really therapeutic.
Mm.
And I have heard a lot of people say, "Oh, was it really cathartic?" I'm like, actually, it wasn't cathartic for me
Yeah. For some
because
people, it's sort of like almost re-traumatizing.
it
Mm.
just brought it all back up again that I then had to deal with again.
Yeah.
And so it took a very long time to write because I needed the time and the space
Mm.
and the healing in between, really,
Yes.
to go, no, that's not our life anymore.
Mm.
This is where we are now. Um so creativity, it also depends on the purpose.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
purpose of that was to share our story with others.
Mm.
And it was a painful process for me to create it.
Yeah.
But I'm so proud of the end result because, we've heard from countless people how much it's opened their eyes to, wounds that people can't see.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for his service. I appreciate that, and I think the service is often it's a full family thing too, as you've just sort of alluded to. And what is that book called? If people want to find that book,
Yeah, it's called Through the Valley, One Family's Journey Through PTSD.
okay.
It's written as a fictional retelling of true life events. So it doesn't read like a journal. It reads like a story.
Mm,
Yeah, it's just our story. The people are real. Yeah.
yes, yeah. Well, look, thank you so much for today. I think we could go on for hours because obviously we both really enjoy talking about this. However, I think it is time to go. Where can people reach you if they want to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Instagram, on Facebook,
Yes.
um, as Tina Summers Art Studio or Tina Summers Author Artist. I'm in both of those places in those different aspects.
And
And my
it's summers like the like the
yes,
season.
like the season, yes,
SUMMERS.
UMMERS,
Yes,
yeah. And just normal Tina, like Tina Turner or Tina Arenas I used to get when I was a kid.
yes, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tina. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Me too. Thank you so much. It's been lovely.
And thank you for everyone who's listening or watching. We try here at the Wellness Connection, it's all about having real conversations about things that matter. So I really appreciate you listening and you tuning in. Now, please like, subscribe, and share, and rate the podcast as well. I really appreciate all of your support to get this really useful information out there. I talk to such interesting people and get such useful information. So please make sure you're sharing it so that more people can learn about some of these great topics. And thank you, everyone. And I will talk to you all again next week. Thanks. Bye.